So you will not believe with who I am today in this evening here. So I'm very grateful. It's a remarkable lawyer from Europe, a transport lawyer, in my opinion the best lawyer which we have in transport in Europe. So Frederick, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, because I saw yesterday all the newspaper from all the transport magazine all the news magazine was writing that the European Court of Justice decided about the mobility package, about the returning of the truck at 8 weeks. So we should be happy for this or not?
So first of all, this was kind of the verdict we were expecting. So it's not that much of news. As you probably heard, almost a year ago, the Attorney General at the Court of Justice already made his advice, and he advised what they decided now. So it's not a big surprise. However, I think it's a big mistake to celebrate this as a big victory. It is not a big victory. Actually, if you look at what Western European newspapers are saying, is European Court confirmed the mobility package. And of course the mobility package is in different steps. Now, the only victory you're having is the non-return home of the driver. But in reality, it is not a victory because there was nothing going on. As you know, the mobility package came into operation in February 2022. Since then, in my law office and all the other ones I know, there was not a single case about return home of the truck. And it's easy to explain why. Because the return home of the truck, the countries where you are going cannot and could not give sanctions. So nobody was controlling this and nobody was doing anything with this. Also, if you look at it from a more legal perspective, the return home of the truck was not a measure by itself. It was a part of measures to prove as a transport company that you are situated in a certain country. Now, it's not because you don't return the truck, it's only one of the measures to see if you're situated in Romania, Slovakia, Lithuania, Belgium, whatever. It's only one of them, which means that if you're okay with the other ones, you shouldn't have had a problem. Which also means that the fact that now the return home of the truck has been abolished, in reality it's not a big victory. According to me, but perhaps we will talk about this later, the real angle in the mobility package was never about the return home of the truck. This was like a measure which everybody was like, wow, this is strange. But the real angle is about the IMI. But I suppose we will talk about this later.
Yes, for sure, because it's very interesting. Mention something about the IMI declaration, which it's interesting. You can tell me more about what it's about?
Yeah, like I told you before, for me, the real core of the mobility package is there. The mobility package was made to equalize working conditions in the European Union. And if you look at what the consequences could be of this legislation, then the heaviest consequences were always there, never in the return home of the truck. They were always in the wage conditions. Now, what is important today is that the European Court fully underlined the legality of these measures, which means two things, and most people forget about this. The IMI declaration only is the declaration, but there's something behind this. The declaration is the first thing, so every transport company from all over Europe and even coming from outside Europe should make the declarations for every driver. So that's the first part. Not having the declaration is in most countries a crime. But there's the second part, which is probably more important. The second one is that, of course, in this IMI declaration, and through this IMI declaration is a way to control the wages of the drivers and the equality of payment of wages of the drivers. Now, what you have to understand, especially if you look at it from a Western European perspective, is that before these measures, for the control officers, it was quite hard to do big controls on what we call social dumping. Why was it hard? Because, you do a control, you stop a truck at the road. Mostly the driver has not salary slips with him, he has no information. He doesn't know who his colleagues are, he doesn't know how his colleagues are paid, he doesn't know nothing. Today, if they do a control with the IMI declaration, I stop a truck, I just am a control officer, I look in the computer, I say, oh, they are working from company transports in Romania. I can see not only what they declared about this driver, I can also see how many drivers there are, where they are driving, and what is even easier, I can immediately send a demand to the transport company through the IMI system, look, provide to me all information I need, which is quite easy. So we are expecting, in view of this confirmation of the IMI measures, more controls, not less, on social dumping. We are expecting heavier controls because it's going to be easier. They will ask for the information. Not only not doing the declaration is a crime, but also not providing the information is a crime. So if you get a request from Belgian, French, these are the usual suspects in this kind of investigation. If you do not provide the information, then once again you have a new crime, already two. The third one, and that's the most important one, you provide the information and you should prove that you at least pay equal pay to the countries to where the driver is detached. Now, there things get immensely complicated, and I still have to analyze the decision of the European Court because it's very long, but they confirmed the measure, which means that this whole complex system in which you will now have to calculate the wages of the drivers, you will have to do it. And if you don't do it, you can get a third sanction, which is actually the worst one. Now, this is going to give a lot of problems for two reasons. First of all, there's not a lot of information available on what should be implicated in the wages of the drivers, because we are not only talking about the wage per day or per hour, we are also talking about, for example, cost allowances, because if I am a driver from, example, once again, Romania, I come to Belgium, that's the example I know best, he's not only allowed for an hourly wage, which is higher than the one in Romania, but he's also allowed for an hourly cost compensation, which is about €2 now, I think. Like a daily allowance, he's allowed according to Belgian law. And then you have all these rules on the number of hours he can work, overtime. So it's going to get immensely complicated. So once again, like I told you in the first question, we should not celebrate this as a big victory. Actually, it's a confirmation of very complex rules which could have an enormous impact on the market. And I know from several control, because I have good relations with the control officers in Belgium and France, they were also awaiting this decision to see, okay, are they going to confirm or not? Now it has been confirmed, and now they know they can do the controls. So actually it's bad news. So
actually we don't need just to have the IMI declaration like it was till now, but to have the IMI declaration and the calculation and everything to be correct.
To be correct, exactly. So it's going to be for everybody who is in HR, in transport, and if you write really multinationally, it's going to be a nightmare. It's going to be a nightmare. If you do a trip, you start in Romania, in the best case. Romania, you drive bilaterally first to Germany, then you do Germany, the Netherlands, then Netherlands, Belgium, Belgium, France, France, Luxembourg, Luxembourg, Belgium, Belgium, Spain, Spain, Belgium, Belgium, Germany. Imagine the complexity and calculations, and there's still a lot of parts of this where we have not enough information. It's quite difficult to see. For example, if you, I think we already discussed this before, if you do, for example, in one day, you drive from the Netherlands to Belgium to France, and then he sleeps in France. Which daily allowance should you pay? Because in one day he is in three. Is it the Dutch one? Is it the Belgian one? Is it the French one? We don't know. So we need still clarification on this. And I think it is going to have to come because the number of controls will go up.
if it's also something else in the decision which caught your attention.
Well, actually, yes. There may be, but I still need to analyze, like I said before, the full verdict. What I read until now is there's something about return home of the driver. As you know, one of the big measures is not only what has now been abolished, the return home of the truck, but also the return home of the driver. Now, what is important, I think, but once again, we still need to further analyze this, is that in the return home of the driver, the European Court has confirmed explicitly the right of the driver to not go home.
Okay.
Which means that we see that in a lot of countries, especially in France at this moment, they are saying that the driver always should go home, which is clearly not correct in view of this new decision. So I think that's, if you compare what we have, the only good news we are having, not the abolishment of the return home of the truck, which is actually expected and not so spectacular as if you would see in the first place. But what could be more important is an easier way to handle this return home of the driver with the documentation which a lot of companies already have. They ask the driver what you want to do. You have the right to go home. Do you want to go home? Where do you want to go? We will organize it for you, but you still have the choice. So I think, but once again, I still need to analyze the judgment. It's only from yesterday, but I think that we can make a case there to make it a little bit easier to defend transport companies on this aspect. So that's, I think, the most positive news I can get from it.
Yeah, so the conclusion is that we don't need to jubilate now in the decision of the court.
That's true, you know, there's no need for jubilation. I think in the confirmation of the sleeping in the truck, the confirmation of the IMI, quality of wages, the confirmation of cabotage rules, which is also important, all those measures were confirmed. The one which was annulled is not a big victory if you analyze it correctly. And the only maybe good news we could have is a little relaxation in the interpretation of the return home of the driver. But I still think that the heavy measures will be in the IMI and in the wage comparisons. I think there the real difficulty is going to be, especially for Southern and Eastern European transport companies, on how to do the calculations. It's going to be a lot of administration, and it's going to be a lot of work for HR departments if they want to do it correctly.
Frederic, thank you very much for this very, very nice analysis and for the interview.
It was my pleasure. Totally. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you.